early on, I obviously recognize that the DSA running hot is very good for my side politically. Like the DSA is the right strongest soldier in general elections. But I didn't like it when the left propped up Trumpy candidates because they thought Trumpy candidates were better to run against. And similarly, I want communists to lose at everything. I want communists to lose. Like when communists play Go Fish with their kids, I hope they lose. I hope their kids crush them at Go Fish. I want communists to lose at everything they do. So while it would be, I think, helpful for the right, for the DSA types to run strong in these generals, I don't want them to win. And I applaud you for picking this fight. Like I think it's a great fight to pick.
Well,
But I
it's a
wanted
natural
to.
fight, right? It's a natural fight that I think, and we see this, James Carville, Bill Maher, other prominent liberals are all standing up and having this fight because there was always, and this is, I think, where we're going to disagree, right? Because obviously we both agree that DSA is a menace, right?
Sure.
We agree. Where we disagree, one of the points we disagree on is that liberals have no limiting principles that allow them to fight this, because we see this happening now. We see many prominent liberal influencers and even some progressive influencers stepping up, taking a stand against not only the DSA, but Hassan Piker and everyone associated with him, the 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙s of the world and all those things. We are coming together, organizing, taking a stand, and fighting back against the illiberal, more socialist elements of our party and people who are trying to subvert our party. It is
Well,
happening. Oh, just real quick.
and God bless. I hope you win. I
Yes.
suspect maybe in the short term you might have some success. In the medium to long term, I think you're going to lose. But I hope you win. I applaud the effort. But the reason I reached out to you, and I do want to get into all the stuff you just said, but do you remember a year ago or so? It was basically last year. I was still doing the centrist thing. I hadn't pitched my tent on the right yet. My channel basically didn't exist. I was still doing the crowd the basically couch surfing more or less. I think I'd maybe posted a video or two. And I got incensed about this particular op-ed in the New York Times. I had you and I had a big spat about it on Twitter.
I don't. Which can you remind me which spat we
Well,
had? We've had a
this is
couple.
yeah, we've had a couple, but this is why this interested me because the point I made was it appeared to me like the left was using Trump as an obfuscation, as a vehicle to avoid having to articulate what their views were while they were coalescing around some truly terrible ideas that I thought were like absolute deal breakers, unsupportable, horrifying ideas. And the ones in particular in this op ed were abolish the Senate, end the Electoral College, pack the court, which are core
Uh,
DSA positions.
I remember. I remember disagreeing with you on ending the Electoral College, and I still do. I don't think we should abolish it through extrajudicial means or extra constitutional means, but I think that um the Electoral College is one check too many, and we have plenty of other checks in place that do keep away from the tyranny of the majority type of deal, right? I think
Well,
we have the Senate for that. I think we have the filibuster for that. I think we have the Supreme Court for that. I think we have other mechanisms in place, and there is such a thing as too many checks, which imbalance these things. And I think at this point, the Electoral College is that. But this isn't a debate on Electoral College. I don't want to. We
no,
can just
but and
pass
I
that,
do,
right?
but I want to circle back to all the stuff you said. I think is worth circling back to. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reason I brought up that tweet as a starting point is it begs the question, why now? And I applaud you for picking the fight. I think it's a good fight to
Why
pick.
now?
So I'm
Because if I don't, then there will be no liberal parties in America, right? The reason I'm picking this fight now is because we have finally come to a point where, and to be clear, I haven't just started picking this fight now. I've been fighting my whole career against the far left, communist, socialist type of agendas. I've always, and we have records of this, and you can go back through my YouTube career, where I've stood up against people who are advocating for what I feel are illiberal ideals on the left. Before Trump got elected, and when it was Biden, I would push back against people who were advocating for things like banning
Mhm.
everyone on the right from social media platforms and things like that, right? There was a big push to like ban people like Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes and all these people off of every single media platform, and I thought that was an illiberal act, and I fought against that. So I don't think that it's fair to characterize as me starting this fight now. But to answer your question of why I am fighting this fight, it's because I think that there is no functional difference between the DSA and MAGA, and I don't want MAGA to win. And if the DSA wins, functionally MAGA has won. And I don't want that to happen because both are illiberal actors and
Mhm.
both are a threat to my democracy and a threat to my Constitution. And I
But
want to defend that.
I guess the thing that I find amongst our points of disagreement, and I think the most substantive, is what American liberalism actually is. And I think that that's probably the most substantive disagreement. But I think the more topical disagreement, and maybe the one that's more apropos for tonight, is like it appears to me like from the outside looking in, like you think that the rise of overt DSA politicians means that this is the early phase of like the DSA ascension. Whereas I would call this like the late stages of a long march through our institutions, that like the politicians come last, and it was the cultural capture that came first. Like the first move was not the politicians. The first move was creating the group of people who overwhelmingly support these types of politicians to the point where they're polling better than the Democratic, Congress people right now, and they're polling better. Socialism is outperforming capitalism on like a CNN poll they were just talking about like a day or two ago amongst Democratic voters.
Well,
And that project has been ongoing for a really long time and doesn't strike me as new at all. It seems very late stage.
so there's a couple threads I want to push on and pull on, but I do want to get to your definition of liberalism eventually. I have a definition of liberalism that I want to compare notes on.
Yeah,
But before we do
we
that,
should do that for sure.
um, when I say early stages, what I mean is that this is the first time that they have an actual chance of gaining political influence and power above just the noise level. And one of the reasons that that is true and that is the case is because of the rise of Trump. Trump is, in my view, a large part responsible for the rise of the illiberal left, as I like to call them, because it's more than just the DSA, right? It's more than just the DSA specifically. There's a large group of illiberalism rising on the left and challenging the establishment, status quo, whatever you want to call it, that is being empowered by Trump. And not just directly as they are now, because I think you'd agree with me that Fox News and other Republican organizations are now promoting DSA candidates and bringing them on their show to showcase them. And the idea is it's going to show everyone how crazy they are, and it's going to help the right. And I think you ceded that to me.
I said that in my opening. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So, like, you agree with this, right? But I think that if Trump had lost in 2016, we wouldn't be seeing the rise of the DSA now. If Trump had
yeah.
lost in 2024, we wouldn't be seeing the rise of the DSA now. Do you disagree?
I think that it's just a misdiagnosis on almost, of every level. But the way that I look at the
Well, pick one
DSA
level
is
and let's start there, right?
well, the ideological capture of key U.S. institutions, mostly education, but we could talk about media, but education's where I spend more time thinking and researching, and because I'm a former teacher. But as universities and college and teacher training facilities and colleges in the country became increasingly dominantly left leaning, like so left leaning that you would be much more likely to find an open Marxist than a conservative in most of like a teacher training course or a humanities course these days. The I view Trump and Trumpism as a reaction to that. Like there was basically conservatives completely failed to stem the tide of a rising cultural, I'm going to use the term neo-Marxism, but you could talk about postmodernism, post-structuralism, whatever you want to call it, sentiment on the left. They failed to stem the tide, and they kind of bought into this idea that the right could only ever serve as a brake on the left. The left, was going to have the ultimate ends of history. Whatever, the scales of justice are long, this sort of thing, and the right was there only to slow them down temporarily, but not actually to aim at any particular target. And Trump was a kind of vulgar groping in the direction of a recalibration. I don't think he does this consciously necessarily, though sometimes I wonder, or well all the time, which is oftentimes my frustration with him. But that it was a reaction to that, like the sense that what it meant to have American values was being fundamentally altered.
Sure, I disagree. And I think that we can look. My evidence of this is.
I super apologize. My kids are freaking out in the background. I'm gonna give me 1 second.
Oh, take care of family stuff. I will talk to my chat. Okay.
Sorry, 1 second.
You're fine. I'll talk to Ryan's chat too while he's doing this. Okay. Chat. I don't know you, but welcome. This is a thing that this is a game they like to play, and I'll save my arguments here. But like, if you're worried about an authoritarian figure coming in and reshaping the courts, or reshaping schooling, Trump's doing that, right? He's doing that now. That is what Trump is doing. If you're worried about the government coming in and taking up portions and nationalizing portions of private industry, Trump's doing that. Trump's doing that now. If you're worried about a social, a unitary party, right? Like by kind of bringing up all and kind of centralizing an authority, right? And taking away checks and balances and taking away the distribution of powers. Trump's doing that right now. This is all happening right now under Trump. So everything that they use to say that they fear us, right, of us doing, Trump's doing it right now. But I guess we'll wait for you to back. All good?
Hey there.
Everything
1 second.
fine? Look, family's first. So if you need
No. It should be okay. My wife's out of town, so I'm Mr. Momming it tonight. So, if hopefully they will go to sleep at this point.
Hopefully. We'll see. I don't know.
No promises.
Okay. We'll find out. So I guess where I would say that you're misdiagnosing, to get back to that portion, is all my life, and I'm an old man. I'm 43. I just had my birthday a few days ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've survived, I guess, 33 revolutions around the sun. All my life, I've heard that Democrats are communists. They're socialist communists. This was a favorite weaponized language of people like, who is that talk show guy? What the fuck is his name? I'm blanking on him. He's dead now.
There's a bunch of them.
Not Alex Jones. No, there's a real, he won the Presidential Medal of Freedom, right, under, I think, Bush or Trump. Who am I thinking of? Come on, chat. Chat, help me out.
Gingrich?
No, Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh. Yes, the guy that everyone was listening to in the 90s and things like that. And a bunch of people have always painted the Democrats as socialist. And I think you even wrote an article on this that I read, saying that the overuse of the terms socialist and communist is like the boy crying wolf, right? If you cry wolf, cry socialist so many times, eventually, even though people come and check, oh, it's not actual socialism. Oh, it's not actual socialism. Oh, it's not actual socialism. Eventually, a socialist will come along. And when it's time to point out the socialist, no one's going to believe you. So when people point to the rise of socialism on the left, I think that most of that comes through, not all of it, but most of that can be laid at the feet of the people who made the term meaningless, when they accused every
No,
single person of being a socialist on the left.
no, I think
Are you
that's
so hold on? What are you saying no to precisely? Are you saying no that most Republicans and most Republican influencers since the '90s have painted everyone from Clinton to Obama to every moderate as a socialist?
you
And
know,
you think that didn't
I
happen?
mean, I agree that the term has been overused historically, but what I'm talking about is like, for example, like Paulo Freire, who's a overt Marxist educational author who wrote books like The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which, if you go on Google Scholar, has I forgot the exact number. It's somewhere like 70 to 100,000 citations. He's not just the most cited scholar in all of like educational theory for teacher training. He's one of the most cited scholars in all of the humanities, on the same level as people like Foucault, who, by the way, also postmodernist. But Freire is an overt Marxist, and was teaching the idea that education is a political act and that we should be teaching, in the Gramscian way, children to have critical consciousness and to awaken to the injustices of the world. So it's not like this isn't like a weird corner case theory. And I'm not talking about like what language political influencers were using. I'm saying that like there actually was ideological capture of key institutions along the way, which teach overtly Marxist things, but it didn't start with them. It started with the progressives in the 1900s who abandoned American morality, natural law theory, these kind of core American philosophies, and moved towards this idea, the teaching that, society is what works, and that we have this kind of Darwinian evolutionary living model, which is kind of shades of the modern day moral anti-realism, moral subjectivism, and injected that into the way that we do education. And that opened the door down the road for people like Freire and others like him who've become very influential. And that
Sure.
this is, I'm
I
not saying that this is, I don't know whether Rush Limbaugh accurately diagnosed these things when he called people communists, but I do know that that happened, and that has had a profound influence on the way
okay.
that people, particularly young people who get degrees and go into the
So
world, think.
as
And
someone
that's the issue.
Sure, as someone who has been through the education system, not through as a teacher, but as a student, I can tell you that that did not happen in my instance, right? That I went to college in Florida. I went to, well, okay, I shouldn't say specifics because people are weird, okay?
Yeah, don't
But
just don't.
I've been through the education system. I was not primed with socialist theory or primed to be a communist in any way, shape, or form. The exact opposite, in fact. And I think that you're overstating your case. There are absolutely a more leftward tint to education in America. That's just true. That would be silly of me to deny that in America, an education system, it's primarily taught and run by people who are on the left and sometimes the far left. And in fact, I have pushed against that kind of lack of diversity of thought, the lack of pluralism in our education system. That has been a problem. But that is not why we have the rise of the DSA today, because as you said, this has been something that's been going on for decades. But it isn't until recently that the seeds have borne fruit, and that is because some of the basic checks and guardrails against that have been weakened for a variety of reasons. Two of those reasons are, one, the desecration of language done and helped and propped on and taken advantage of, right, by bad actors to pervert what socialism means, right? Today, kids today, that CNN poll you cited, a lot of people identify with socialism, but it's not socialism. It's just like a more kind of Nordic model of liberalism. It's not socialism, right? They have been, the word has been tainted. They hear socialism and they think Obama, but a little more left than Obama, right? That's what they think, right? That's why they identify with it. And this has been something that the right and the left have worked hand in hand to do, because people generally don't like socialism, or at least historically. So you had people like Rush Limbaugh, you had people like James Lindsay, not James Lindsay. What's his name? He recently died. There's a lot of recently died.
A lot of people who died that you
Yes,
want to talk about.
look,
Yeah.
I'm forgetting names, but there's a lot of people on the right who have pushed this narrative that everyone on the left, all of us, were secret socialists, and Obama was a secret socialist, Clinton was a secret socialist, all these things, right? And the socialists have taken advantage of that, and they've used it to disguise themselves, to mask on and say, yeah, I'm a socialist like Obama was a socialist. It's not so bad, bro. I'm a socialist like Clinton is a socialist.
Unfortunately,
it's not so bad, bro.
I think this is why.
Is that wrong, what I just said?
No, I think this is why you're going to lose this fight with them, because even if all of that is true, and I don't even think I disagree with most of that, the issue that I'm pointing out is that if you view the rise of socialism and the DSA and all these things as primarily a political vector, you're missing that they overtly and openly, like if you read Gramsci, you read the people who cite Gramsci, talked about the need to capture culture before moving into politics. It's not a subtle thing. It's in the writings of the people these people cite and love. And then they did it. And then they did capture our educational institutions in the humanities, in various. It's your personal experience, and we can get into mine, and we can talk about where we differ on that. But the fact that this has happened is verifiable. You can look at the scholarship, like read Paulo Freire. Like just read what he says.
I've read Gramsci,
at critical race theorists.
I've read these Gramscian theorists and things like that. I understand the argument. I understand that the plan that they had. I am saying that they were failing in their plan. That they had while you could point to individual instances of them being successful, to act as if the culture had been captured by socialism is just, at least until the last maybe 5 or 10 years, incorrect. And the reason that they have gained what they have now, which I think that, well, maybe you would disagree.
It's called a long march because it takes a long time.
Can I just ask real quick? Do you think that in our culture today, socialism is more popular than it was, I think, anytime since maybe the 30s?
I don't know. Probably. I'm not sure.
I would make that argument that
I think
maybe the 50s, right? Maybe in the last 30 years at least, right? In my lifetime.
By focusing only on the politics, what you're going to miss is how the seedbed was created. And certainly
I just need you to respond to what I said, though. Not to talk about the politics. I was talking about the culture. We're not talking about politics.
It sounded like you were talking about the politics.
No, I'm talking about the culture. I'm talking about in the culture, being socialist today is more popular, and we can look at the CNN polling.
Oh, sorry. I did respond. I said I don't know, probably, but I don't know, probably.
I don't know.
I've not looked at polling across time.
Okay.
I assume you're right.
In the last 30 years, at least, it might be in the 50s or something that it was more popular than now. I don't know, but at least now, today, in the last 30 years, it is on the rise. And I guess where we differ is I don't think that that's largely in part of this grand plan by socialists that have been going for 100 years, right? Even though I acknowledge that exists to some degree.
The thing is, when the bugbear was critical theory specifically, right? It was a conspiracy theory, and then it was a, right, racist, fascist, whatever the ism of the day was. And then it just turned out that people looked at, they're like, oh, there actually is a lot of critical theory being taught in educational institutions. And, oh, it turns out that, yes, this is actually a thing that's happening. And then you had people like Jonathan Haidt, who documented how various educational institutions like Yale changed their mission statement to incorporate social justice elements rather than only truth-seeking elements, because they recognized that the mission of their establishment had changed on the basis of these ideas. You can go back and you can trace how area studies started promulgating in these institutions.
So just to be clear, a group coming in and changing enforcing change upon a university to how they teach is bad, correct?
No, my point is, and I see what you're doing, Wick, but the point I'm making is by fixating on Trump, you are going to lose this fight because you don't understand it. And what I'm trying to point out to you is that the actual fight with people who believe these things, and by the way, this is why I'm pitching my tent on the right, not the left, is because I tried to have this conversation and similar conversations with people on the left, and it was always dead ended in present day politics. Like, you want to make the conversation about how much you dislike Trump. I believe you. I don't need to be convinced you dislike Trump. What I'm trying to say is, if the left really is going to throw off this parasite, you need to fight it where it lives. And where it lives is in our educational institutions primarily. That's the host. That's where it lives. If we did something about that, it would do wonders to fix the whole thing. But the fight is only done politically. And I think you're going to lose that fight in the long run because, and this is not you necessarily, though we can talk about it, but when I hear people talk about the DSA on CNN, but also in our corner of the internet, their objections are mostly practical. I don't think the electorate's going to go for it. I think it's too extreme. I don't think it's going to get votes. It's going to hurt us with the normies. They don't actually have principled objections to these things because their principles were informed by the very cultural takeover that I'm flagging. So unless this is addressed, long term, you're going to lose. And that's the thing I'm trying to get through and try to flag for you.
I think that you're correct in that we have to fight this on multiple fronts. And if you look at my content, if you think that my content primarily today is Trump bad content, it's not, because I am fighting something that no one else is doing right now.
Unnecessary. The reason I'm talking to you is because you're the only person on the left I know who's having this conversation. But you don't need to convince me.
But we have audiences watching. I may not be able to convince you, but I'm talking to my audience, and I'm talking to your audience, and I'm talking to other audiences who might view this, right? But my problem here is that we cannot win this fight from the right because the right has fallen to it. If you were worried about private industry being nationalized by the government, then you should be worried when Trump nationalizes private industries for the government, which he did, right? If you were worried about central power authority coming in to dictate what universities can and cannot teach, then Trump already is doing that, right? If you were worried about the consolidation of power from a federalized system into a central authority, then Trump is doing that today. You cannot win this fight from the right because the right has lost this fight because they don't have the actual principles in place, or they abandoned them, to actually fight socialism. You have lost your fight to authoritarianism specifically, right? You were weak to this. And I think that what I can learn from you is maybe some different ways to fight this on the education front. You are an educator. That's fair. But when we're talking that it cannot just be fought on the education front. It has to be fought on the cultural front. It has to be fought on the political front. It has to be fought on the influencer front, because I think that rather than money in politics, and this is a little bit of a side, it's the influencer class, the staffer class that is causing us so much pain.
So,
right?
But this is where the chickens come home to roost, unfortunately. And the reason I say this is, obviously, you and I disagree about our assessment of the right, and we can. I mean, litigating that is almost tedious at this point.
Well, we
we've done
disagree
it before.
on our assessment for the left too. We disagree, right?
Well, look, I just let you go on.
But why is it? Why is it tedious to do it for the right, but it's not tedious for the left?
I just let you go on a long tirade that was premised by me saying, I don't need to hear this. I know what your position is. You saying I'm doing it expressly for the audience, even though you don't need to hear it, and me letting you say it anyway. So if we're gonna, it'd be nice if you didn't interrupt me 2 seconds in after I generously let you just lecture the audience in the spirit of a conversation that we frankly know I don't need to hear because I already told you I knew what you were going to say. So sorry, man. We disagree on our assessment of the right, and we can disagree about our assessment of the left. That's fine. The problem here is that we're heading into a post-Trump world very soon. Even stalwarts like Destiny are recognizing that the current Trump world paradigm is not adequate for whatever comes next. And it's just not going to be adequate for whatever comes next. So, in that spirit, what I was hoping to have the conversation with you about was what can be done to fight this particular evil, because it is an evil. And the reason that I get frustrated about the speech is that the chickens came home to roost. The All the time that people were calling Trump a Nazi or a fascist, the the moral loading got extreme enough that now that you have the DSA rising, they are being treated like, oh, the DSA is a problem and MAGA is a problem. So we have two equivalent problems. That's not true. The equivalent to Marxism is Nazism. And the MAGA are not Nazis. They might be things you disagree with, but they're not Nazis. What you have on the left is the equivalent of that. It is the rise of the particular pernicious form of left-wing ideology that we know to be evil and lethal if it is allowed to run its course. It is the equivalent of Nazism, not whatever MAGA is, and that's the problem.
Okay. So first of all, I disagree with you that the right and MAGA are Nazis. I don't think they are. I don't think most of them are. Stephen Miller maybe, okay, but most of them are not. And that is a misdiagnosis. Socialism is not the opposite of Nazism. I would say, or the opposite side of the same coin thing, right? I would argue, in my enemy, and this is why MAGA and the DSA are both my enemy, is authoritarianism, right? Whatever flavor that might rear its head in. And I worry that the same reason I fight so much on Live and Learn and with other liberal creators and leftist creators who my frustration with them is that they do not recognize the existential danger of what they are facing. And I will agree with you. It's an existential threat. Would we agree there at least? Socialism and the rise of socialism on the left is existentially threatening to our liberal democracy.
To America and American values, yeah.
To our liberal democracy, yes. Liberal democracy everywhere, not just in America, right, but everywhere. I think that you are making a similar mistake as they are, and you do not recognize the existential threat that is posed by MAGA authoritarianism that has actually won over on the right. You're right that Trump himself is on the way out, right? And you are right to see MAGA is failing in the polls. It's failing in government. It's failing in its ability to win over voters. It's why the strategy right now of the Republicans in MAGA are not to fight against, right, or not to prop up their own wins, but to point out Democrats bad, right? Leftists bad. It's not going to work, unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, but because we live in such a D+8 environment right now, we live in such an environment that is so preferential to the Democrats right now. That's why the DSA has a chance. In another environment, like in a D+2, D+1, they wouldn't have any chance at all. So this is the time. They see this as their chance. And they even say this. I've heard Mike from PA say this, like it's now or not at all. This is their time. And I need to get across to those people on the left that that's an existential threat.
Yeah.
But I wish you would recognize that Trump is also an existential threat. And I know you don't like it, you find it tedious, but I don't think it's tedious.
I think at this point, we're not going to be able to avoid a tangent that's probably going to take up the rest of the conversation.
Okay.
But I think what we're going to have to do is talk about what we think American liberalism actually is at this point. Because I think I agree with you that people need to be wary of threats to American liberalism, but I disagree with you about like what American liberalism actually is. And that's probably the main source of our disagreement. If I
Okay.
had to guess, so maybe I don't know what the right way to lead into this
I
conversation
could
is,
just
but
give
like,
you my definition.
okay, sure, give me your definition. I might ask you some follow up
Sure,
questions
sure.
though, because
It's a pretty succinct. Liberalism is a political philosophy that protects individual liberty through equal rights, rule of law, democratic government, pluralism, and limits on state power. I think that's a good, succinct definition. It's not all encompassing. We could probably get into more detail on each little bit, right? But I think that's a good starting spot.
I mean, I'm going to do the 4-year-old question now.
Sure, sure.
Like, why? Like, why is any of that? Why does any of that matter?
Why does it matter?
Yeah,
Because
like, why are
these
those values good values?
Sure. These values protect our ability to have free agency, the ability to make choices and have those choices matter, and to seek our own, what did they say? In the pursuit of happiness, right?
Sure.
That is why it matters, that these, frankly, uh, fundamental and core liberal values, right, protect us from oppression by bad actors. They protect us from oppression by the tyranny of the majority, right? And they protect us from tyrants and dictators. Those are the three things.
Okay. And I think that, obviously I'm a big fan of the Declaration. The I think where the main disagreement I have with the modern quote unquote liberal movement is, I feel like they're progressives who rolled up the carpet behind them and called the status quo liberalism. There's been an ocean of change to the core American values over time that have been, I think, missteps and pushed us off of what American liberalism actually is. And those missteps need to be corrected.
Well, can
Now,
you give
one of the
us
one
your
of them
definition of
one
American
of them you
liberalism?
flagged earlier, which was the DSA and the left as a whole is very invested in getting us closer to a one-to-one populist democracy. They would like to remove checks on the one-to-one democratic process. Our founders were deeply suspicious. In fact, the entire structure of the federal government was designed to prevent one-to-one populist democracy. And what we're seeing from the left is a continuous push to get closer to one-to-one populist democracy. That doesn't strike me as compatible with American liberalism. That actually strikes me as a threat to American liberalism, though it might
I,
make
I
you feel like you're more
I
free in
don't
some sense.
disagree. I don't disagree with what
But
you're saying, that the
but you just
DSA
talked
is
about
a
you
threat to
wanted to
American liberalism. I want to
but
know
you
what you think American liberalism
but
is.
hold on, but you just said earlier in this conversation that you wanted to get rid of the Electoral College, which is one of those checks.
Yes, because I think that while we could prevent all crime by arresting everyone, that's possible, right? But that would infringe on certain freedoms and democracy and other things. And I think that by getting rid of the Electoral College, we have so many other checks in place that is overkill. Much like arresting everyone would also be overkill to prevent crime, even though preventing crime is a
Mhm.
perfectly good thing to seek, right? Is a good goal. There are steps you could take that are oversteps. And I think that the Electoral College in today's environment has proven itself to be an overstep because, again,
Because
not
why?
every, if I may finish,
What's wrong with it?
if I may
Yeah.
finish, right? Not every single thing in the original Constitution was good. They allowed slavery, for example. That was very anti-liberal.
Mhm.
It was antithetical to the idea of American values, but it was a compromise they made at the time because of a variety of reasons, right? I think that getting rid of that was good overall to get us closer to liberalism, which is a balancing act in a lot of ways between competing rights that are in tension. And I think that by getting rid of the Electoral College, we get us closer to what I feel is a liberal society, right?
Why? Why is it? I get that's what I don't get. Like,
Sure.
why is it
Well, we
closer?
have, because there currently are too many checks in place on the will of the majority. It's good to have some. That's why I like the Senate, for example. The Senate itself is a check on democracy run amok, right?
Mhm.
Democracy at scale, as you say.
So
We give
we
each
already
state
weakened
two
that check.
representatives. We give each state two representatives to represent the will of a community and things like that. Even if the community is small, right? Such as, like, I don't know, Nebraska versus a larger community such as California, right? I think that those are good checks. The Supreme Court's another check, right? We have the Supreme Court, which can knock down legislation that violates individual rights just because the will of the majority said that that individual right they didn't want anymore. The Supreme Court's there, and as just a matter of law, to say this goes against the Constitution, and we're going to strike it down. And I think that's another check. I think what the Electoral College does is it provides, it imbalances things too much on the other side. But I'm not going to, like, to be clear, I'm not going to die on that hill. It's not something that's like an article of faith for
Mhm.
me. If you can convince me that the Electoral College actually still serves its purpose today, fair enough. Whatever, right? Not a big deal.
Yeah. So I think where we're going to the reason that we're going to have some of these fundamental disagreements is I look at our system, and it is supposed to have a lot of checks on populist democracy. The but a lot of the checks that we initially had don't exist anymore. One of them was that the franchise was limited. I don't think that the way it was limited was correct, but like it was limited. Another was that the Senate was appointed by the states, not voted on by the people. Now, another one that we flagged is that the states have a role in electing the president, but that's another one that we're going to get rid of. And another one was the idea that the Supreme Court would be interpreting an enduring
I
document
do
of
still want
constitutional
your
law,
definition, by the way.
and we can get to that. Yeah, but then
When?
it's but
Before we
well,
forget.
I'm trying to respond to your point.
Okay.
But then that got corrupted by the idea of living constitutionalism, where the court could invent rights that were not in the Constitution in the first place. So what I'm pointing out is that you want to get rid of one more check against populist democracy. The DSA wants to get rid of like 3 or 4. I want to restore more of those checks. And probably the fundamental difference in our worldview, and why I was asking why you think getting rid of the Electoral College would be a good thing. Because
Okay.
to me, I look at our system and I go, oh shit, we've eroded too many of the checks. We have too much faction capture. We have too much populist democracy. We actually need to restore the
No,
checks, not
look,
get rid of them.
I don't disagree that we've eliminated too many checks. It's just the areas of the checks that we've eliminated are things like now the executive has much more power than it ever has, right? Those checks on
Mhm.
executive authority are far more important to me than and the checks that have been like eroded there are checks like the fucking Electoral College. But I want to hear
Yeah,
your definition of liberalism. Go
sure.
ahead.
American liberalism is the attempt to create a government to secure our natural rights.
Okay, when you say American liberalism, how does it differentiate from liberalism generally?
Because when I talk to people like Helen Pluckrose, who are like more like European classic liberals, they ground their liberalism in like I would say fail to ground, but they attempt to ground their liberalism in kind of just like secular preference. And American liberalism was grounded specifically in our relationship with our creator and in like an overtly objective moral framework, and
Okay.
not grounded in the same way, which makes it philosophically different, even though it often has the same outcome if you apply it to a
Okay,
situation.
what would you define? Because, well, that just begs the question: what is natural rights under your definition? If
Mm.
American liberalism, and I'm going to repeat your definition, make sure I heard it correctly. I might not have. Right? Chat distracts me with those $50 super chats. I see you, and I'm going to get to them. Don't worry, we're going to read those super chats soon. Money is important. I'm a capitalist, okay, if you haven't noticed. But when you say that American liberalism is the attempt to create a form of governance that protects our natural rights, is that correct? Did I repeat it correctly?
Yeah, I'm just quoting the Declaration of Independence.
Okay,
To secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst men.
sure. What are natural rights what's your
Nat-
definition of a natural right?
Natural rights are objective moral obligations, duties, and corresponding rights that are inherent in humans and precede government. So they're not things that the government gives you. They are things that are inherent to your nature.
Um, I don't know how this is liberalism. Can you explain that?
Well, it's the reason why you would care about liberalism. Like, why is free speech better than not free speech? Because we have a right to liberty, and that's inherent to human nature, and liberty is better than tyranny. Like, why do we want people to be able to have freedom of religion so that they can choose based on their conscience what's right and good and noble and true? Because that's inherent to our nature to be able to make these choices. Why should property rights be protected? Because it is inherent in human nature to try to make your life better, to try to make the life for your children's better, and that entails acquiring and improving property. That's part of what it means to be a human. This is like it's a view of human nature and what it means to be a human and to have a good and noble society that is, in this case, grounded overtly in God, which is like a uniquely American spin on like the Lockean framework that we inherited. The Europeans didn't add that piece to it, but we did.
So, what, in your opinion, makes protecting those rights, like what with my definition of liberalism, what is in conflict here? I feel that my definition from the rights that you have laid out, the reasons that you've laid out, my definition of liberalism, which I feel is kind of the classic definition of liberalism, it's one that's kind of universal. It's not unique to America, though I would agree that America, at least currently today, best represents it. I'm just curious what's in conflict. Why is your definition in conflict with mine?
Well, my definition better explains why it is important to protect individual liberties when the majority does not want them.
I fail to see how that follows because again, I have in my definition, and let me check it again to make sure. Yeah, the political philosophy that protects individual liberty through equal rights, rule of law, democratic government, pluralism, and limits on state power. All of these things protect all the rights that you mentioned,
Yeah,
private property rights, free speech, etc.
but they do,
Strongly.
but they don't answer the why. And the reason that matters is because when you're dealing with like a socialist type, what they're going to say is, well, what does it matter if I have a right to liberty if I don't have enough financial wherewithal to enjoy it? What good is my right to life if I don't have any bread?
The
What,
liberals,
you know, what,
the liberals have answered this, and that's why socialists usually hate liberals, right? They will side with fascists over liberals in most cases, right? The
but
liberals have answers for these things.
But by your own admission in this conversation and in others, you would like to remove the check, at least slower than they would, but some more of the checks on populist democracy, which would eventually lead to the erosion of those very rights. Like if you get rid of the Electoral College, that is one more move towards the faction capture and tyranny of the majority that our founders vehemently decried.
Sure, and if
So
you let people run free from their prison cells, crime will increase. Yes, perhaps, but it will get us to a more liberal place that does protect freedoms overall. Because again, part of liberalism is protecting the right of the individual to dictate how they are governed, to have
well,
a say in that. And I
no,
think
but
that by getting, if I may finish, in my argument, and again, I won't die on this hill. I might be wrong here because my principle isn't electoral college, right? My principle is what can we do to protect the individual right to have a say in how they are governed, but also prevent the mob from being able to have the will of the majority override the individual's rights to that choice. So
well,
these are things that are in tension, right? There's a tension between these two things. And I think that the liberal policies provide relief of that tension, or at least allow us to live with that tension in a way that is better than any other isms. So to frame my opposition to the Electoral College is if we get rid of this, it's like this slippery slope fallacy that the removal of the Electoral College means I'm the same as someone who wants to abolish the Senate. I just reject that framing. I think that's unfair.
Well, what I started researching this recently, and I looked back and I was like, God, how did we get to this place? And, in the early progressive era, like the Woodrow Wilson era, there was a move to say that the limitations on the kind of Jeffersonian government were, he called them Newtonian, but the government needs to be Darwinian and evolving. And we can't be constrained by a constitution or like a set of values that's outdated. So we need to institute the income tax, but only for the very wealthy and only temporarily, surely. We need to change the 17th Amendment. We need to, totally change the structure of our government in the same arc that you're describing, which weakened all the checks that I've been concerned about and raising, and we has got led to the place where you have the ultimate risk of faction capture, which is that when you have one person who can vote to get a raise from somebody else's pocket, you dramatically change the nature of what democracy is about and what the stakes are. Now that plays forward, and we just see continuous removals of these checks over time, and always it's the left pushing, and always it's the right ceding ground and halting them only temporarily, but never regaining any ground. And unless you think the arc of history is in the direction that the leftists are trying to take it, then there needs to be a stopping point. There needs to be a limiting principle. There needs to be an
there are.
enough is enough point. And what the problem I have is that I don't think that there are articulable limiting principles that will bear the weight that they need to bear, because ultimately someone's going to say, well, God, Wick, like, yeah, I get that freedom of speech is great and all, but like, isn't hate speech harmful?
Yeah, but that's
And
what's
if all you have is like,
but that's what
well, I
that's
have
been
this
happening
preference for this.
from the right, at least in my in the at least in the modern sense of things, that these fears that you have of these limitations being eroded are happening primarily today politically from the right. When we talk about arresting people for their free speech or
We're,
detaining people for their
we're,
free speech,
we're
that is
having a
happening on the right,
conversation.
far more
We're
to the
having a
left. Can I finish?
conversation
I
about
let
our
you go on
philosophies.
this rant for a long
Okay,
time.
then
Allow me to
I'm
respond,
just
please.
okay. You can say this, but I'm just going to go right back to the same
Okay, you
topic and
can,
not deal with
because I
this.
understand that you can't address these points.
No, it's
But
because you're
that's fine.
pivoting to something that
But
is not
you're
relevant.
filibustering because you won't let me respond. I gave you quite a bit of time.
Sure,
I think I've been
Wick,
very, very fair.
make
Allow
make
me to
make your
actually
point.
talk.
I'm just
Right?
make your
Allow
point.
me to actually talk, and you can address all my inconsistencies or errors as you see them after I'm finished. But I have to be able to get it out before you correct me on something that I am not incorrect about. One of the things that one of the frustrations I have with talking to you is you do this. You play the clock, right? And you're distracting me now, and I'm complaining about you instead of addressing my point. And let me get to my point here, right? I understand that we have had changes in our system in the last 100 years, right? That have, in many ways, gone towards a more progressive bent. But they have always been in line with liberal values. Like, for example, protecting individual liberties through equal rights. The Civil Rights Act and other such movements, the Civil Rights Movement, largely changed the system in a way that made it more liberal, not less, right? The removal of the ability for states to appoint the senator instead of people within that state to elect that senator removed an obstacle to liberalism, which is, again, the right of the individual to have a say in how they are governed. That it was made more possible by the 17th Amendment, not less. Now, I'm with you that not every change has been good, right? That not everything that has been removed has been a good thing. I think that a lot recently of the removal of checks on executive power, both from Supreme Court decisions and in executive overreach with, what are they called? Executive orders? Yeah. That on the right and the left, no one's been good at that, right? But the right has been at least orders of magnitude worse when it comes to fiscal responsibility, which isn't necessarily a liberal value, but it protects liberal values, right? Being able to stay out of the slavery that is debt, right, does protect our liberal values to actually make choices and have freedom, right? The right has jumped up our debt far more than the left ever has. And we have to make these comparisons. It's not a both sidesism, right? It's comparing, like, if you actually care about these things, you want to vote for the side that is doing it less. And last thing, and then I'll cede the mic, right? I think that you are doing this thing where you're saying any sort of removal of an obstacle or a removal of something that was traditionally in the Constitution is going to inevitably lead to the dissolution of all checks. And I just reject that framing. I don't think that is necessarily true.
So what we were talking about was not to vote left or vote right. I would not waste my
I
time
know.
trying to
That's
convince
why, again, most of my
your
talking about
audience
was
on
about
this.
removing checks, which you
The
did say
Wick,
were.
holy shit! You can't complain about me interrupting you and then instantly interrupt me.
I'm matching energy, boy.
Uh, okay, I mean, we can blood sport it if you want to, but I did let you say a long soliloquy of things that I thought were off point.
That you're not
The
responding to.
the ultimately the in your lengthy soliloquy, though, what you pointed out was that all the changes that I was pointing out as being problematic because they increased the one-to-one faction capture enabling populist democracy, you think are good things. And you said they were good things expressly because, and I'm trying to get the language right, it gives people a say in their government more than they used to have, and that's liberalism. But that's the very thing I was saying that is the problem. The modern version of liberalism views one-to-one democracy as the ultimate goal and ideal. And when something is removed that blocks that, it is
must be talking to this
automatically
guy, 'cause it ain't me.
viewed.
Okay.
It is
You're talking
automatically
to the straw
viewed
man.
as
I'll
a
leave him
good
here
thing.
for you. Go ahead.
Wick, did you say that it was a good thing that we would remove the 17th because it gave people more of a
It
say
gave
in their government?
individuals more of a say, a direct say in their government. But
Okay.
I also acknowledged, which I
So
think you failed
you
to
did
point
say that. I
out.
wasn't fucking
Yes,
hearing
but
things.
part of lying is lying by omission, right? And part of misrepresenting a point is leaving out pretty important portions of that point to change the context. And the context of what I'm saying is that to protect liberalism, which I already stated should have checks on mob rule, it's a balancing act. These things are in tension. The tension between the individual's right to dictate how they are governed is in tension with the right of the individual to be protected from majority tyranny, the tyranny of the majority, right? I think that it is a better balance that the individual voter gets a chance to vote who their senators are rather than the governor or the state legislator appointing them. I think that is better. That does not mean that I think that it's one-to-one democracy is the best.
What is the balancing point then, Wick? Where does it stop?
Well, one point it stops is not abolishing the Senate. One point it stops is not abolishing the Supreme Court. Those are two pretty good lines, I think, that are
Why not
fair. I think that because then the balance is off. Then
why? What's the difference? Like, why is that meaningfully different from your position?
I'm telling you. Then we have a critical lack of protections, antibodies, right, in the system that allows the majority to just run rampant. It's like a body. A body has antibodies, right? If you have too many antibodies and they start attacking your cells, that's bad. But it's also bad if you have too little antibodies because then viruses run free. You have to have a balance. And you may disagree with me on this, and that's fine, but to act as if I'm not seeking the correct balance by saying these checks are good and these checks are bad, right? It's misrepresenting my position.
No, the problem is, Wick, that, okay, you think let's get rid of the Electoral College, and I don't think you said this, but I'm just going to ascribe it to you in hopes that it's true. And that's the last one. That's the last one we're getting rid of.
That I can think of. Yeah.
That's it, right? On the larger left, that puts you in the fringe right position. Like you're in the rightmost position. The rest of the left either agrees with you or tends to go the other direction. There are very few people on the left who would say something like, we need to restore more of these checks. We need to go the other way. In fact, if you listen to Kamala Harris and other leaders talk, they do the exact opposite. So my point is, if all you're saying is we need to reach this equilibrium point, you might have a preference for the equilibrium point being get rid of the electoral college and no more. But that doesn't leave you with sufficient leverage to prevent the mob at your back from pushing it further. And it's always been pushed further. It's never gone the other direction. The carpet always gets rolled up behind us. And then we say, this is the status quo, and we could improve it by getting rid of one more of these checks, just one more this time. It's the just the tip argument done politically. And that's the concern, that it's this endless just one more thing, and then but it's never the last thing. So I don't think that you're identical with the DSA. I certainly don't think you're the same politics as them. I just think that ultimately your politics will lead to the erosion of these checks more slowly, and they'd like to erode them more rapidly. And that seems to be the most substantive difference.
One of the greatest things about my form of liberalism, which I feel is a correct form of liberalism, is that it has natural protections against the kinds of overreach that you are alluding to, because it allows and limits and diversifies power amongst the state and amongst the people and amongst institutions within that state and amongst branches of government. In any individual faction or individual branch that wants to take it too far, there will be a reaction to it. Look at the Supreme Court as an example, right? The Supreme Court has been rolling back a lot of what the right would consider very illiberal, very unconstitutional things. Roe v. Wade, for example, got rolled back very recently. So to act as if this never only goes one way and never the other is just not true, right?
We were talking about populist democracy.
Hold on. Well, hold on. We took something that was a centralized power in the Roe v. Wade thing, and then we federalized it, which is much more liberal, right, than the centralizing of authority here, right? I think that, look, at the end of the day, I don't believe you when you say that most of the left wants to abolish the Senate, or most of the left wants to even end the Electoral College. I think I might be in the minority even there, right? I think that when it comes to this idea that the left...
Kamala Harris gave a speech calling to end the Electoral College and pack the court.
Yeah, when she had a primary, she got less than 2% of the vote.
Well, okay, but what I'm saying is, Wick, if it doesn't represent a mainstream view, what could I possibly point to that would represent a mainstream view? She was your candidate
I'll give you
in the last election.
I'll give you some things you can point to.
No, but this is it's very frustrating when it's like, oh, it couldn't possibly be a thing. And even when there's an example of the most prominent politician on your side saying exactly the thing I'm talking about, that's not enough of an example. That's a little bit frustrating.
Well, we can point to elections, right? We can point to ballot initiatives. We can point to things where there is direct democracy that takes place and see, are these kinds of initiatives winning? Are these kinds of things winning out? And for the most part, they are not, right? I will give you that there are some areas of America, the left right now, where the DSA is ascendant. We can look at New York City, right? We can look at Wisconsin, apparently, unfortunately. We can look at some other areas, and I would grant you that those people want bad things. That's why I oppose them, to be clear. That's why I'm against them, is because they want this kind of authoritarian, illiberal kind of rejection of checks on mob rule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I just reject the premise. I think you're making a faulty argument when you say that because I want the equilibrium point slightly to the left, even though I don't know if getting rid of electoral college is that to the left, maybe. Because I want that policy, that means I'm weakening the check so much that it will just continually slide to the left. I don't think it will. I think liberalism has antibodies that will prevent it.
It's a balancing point, and they just want to balance it slightly differently. But
there are some.
It's just a balance,
like load-bearing things, right?
What?
So,
What's the
like a
load bearing
chair.
thing?
I know that if I have 4 stools on a chair, I can get rid of one and I can rearrange the other, so 3 is still stable. 2 is not. 2 will fall. So we have a natural point where we can say we can remove 1 and it'll be
Yeah, there
fine,
there there there
but
are
if we
load
remove
bearing norms.
2, it won't be fine. And
Yeah,
I think that
I
this works in the same way. There
some
is a
very
point
smart
where
lawyer
if you
gave you that
remove too
argument.
many of these checks, it's obviously going to fall, and I think that we can point to those points and we can use data to show that this is the case. And I think
Yeah.
that the chair example is a great example here.
Yeah, I appreciate the callback to my load-bearing norms argument with Dev. The if we're gonna talk about then load-bearing norms, we'd have to figure out which ones are in fact load-bearing. Like,
Sure.
with Dev, I made the argument that the combination of, substantive due process, filibuster breaking, and court packing is in at least in the aggregate load bearing because it allows you to basically wash out any other check. That check would let you
Do you know
destroy
my
all other
position
checks.
on court packing?
Yeah, I do know your position on court
Okay.
packing. So, but
I tend to agree with your
so
argument
then, well,
here.
no, but
Yes.
I'm trying to flesh it out. Like, what are the other load bearing norms that we can point to so that when the Democratic Party inevitably, in my opinion, but I would love to be wrong about this. I hope you are right and I am wrong. But can we map these out so when the Democratic Party, in my view, inevitably targets
I
these
think
load bearing norms,
that's fair.
we can identify that it's fucking
Yeah, sure,
happening?
sure. I think that's a fair project. I couldn't give you all the ones, every single one right now, but I could give you a good set of principles in order to
Okay. Well,
use to guide you to find
there's some
those.
easy
Can I finish? Can I answer your
court
question?
court packing,
Hold on.
load bearing,
Yeah, court packing at least right today, probably load bearing. I'd give that
fil-
a 80% chance of being load bearing.
broad filibuster breaking.
Less of a chance of being load bearing, but still load bearing. Like 7, I'd give that a
Okay.
65 to 70% chance. How's that?
Filibuster breaking to recognize new states.
Filibuster breaking for any reason at all, because it
Okay.
would
Well,
allow all these things. Right.
recognizing new states has like it just has this kind of like constitutional loophole ism that's in it. That's a bit of a
Well,
bit of an
this is
issue.
what. Hold on. This is why I, instead of going individually by each thing where I don't know the rules and the laws specifically, what I do is I use a broad set of principles to guide me when I am unfamiliar with the specifics. And as I learn the specifics, I can apply my principles to them. Sometimes I try to be correct in this, but I'm not a perfect man, right? Sometimes I apply them incorrectly, but I look at these broad, specific sets of principles, and I use those to guide me in my decision-making
Mhm.
process when the making when the decision is unclear, when the choice isn't readily, obviously uh, clear to me which way is the way to go.
Mhm.
And I bet you're gonna guess what those sets of principles are. I bet you
Yeah,
can guess.
I bet I could. So, but I just want to make sure I don't lose the thread.
Yeah.
The We're going to be faced almost. I wouldn't say certainly, but almost certainly. I'd call it 80% odds that with a left leaning candidate who's going to be in favor of court packing and a right leaning candidate who isn't. That's probably what 2028 looks like.
Um. Hmm. I would say, and I'm not super. I give this 50-50 odds, so I'm not super confident. Um, I say that unfortunately in the populist movement that we are in the country, that both sides will advocate for a form of court packing. They might look different, but they'll advocate for something like that. And the evidence I have for this is that when you talk about the filibuster, for example, Trump advocates for getting rid of the filibuster, and
Yeah,
there's
but I'm
people on the
talking
right
about.
who advocate for getting rid
I
of the
Yeah,
filibuster.
there are people. There's obviously people on
Yeah,
both
yeah, yeah.
sides who
But
advocate
but
for
what I'm
that.
saying,
But court
the reason
packing
they do that,
specifically.
but the reason that they're doing that is because our populism is ascendant in America, right? And populist ideals, which
Yeah.
getting rid of the uh, filibuster, which packing the Supreme Court, they are not left, not right. I would consider them populist, right?
Here.
These are, can I just real quick, I'll be real quick. These are populist, and I would bet, well, no, because it's 50-50, so I wouldn't bet on that, low odds. But there is a large chance that the right also has a populist messaging when it comes to the courts.
Yeah. I think we're likely going to get a situation where there's somebody on the right who's uninterested in court packing, and you can talk about whatever the reasons why, but that's just going to be the case. And there's going to be somebody on the left who is openly advocating for it or has openly advocated for it. And I suspect it's not going to make a great deal of difference to a majority of Democratic voters. Maybe I'm wrong, and I would be delighted to be wrong about this. It would honestly make me, it would fill me, it would be the anti-black pill. It would fill me with hope for the country if I was wrong about this. So I hope I am. But I suspect that that's going to be the case, because I don't think that the balancing act that you've described actually provides people with like an ideological backbone about things like this. I think that what people are going to do is that they're going to end up saying, yeah, that would be, that would be good for us
I
policy wise.
I would be. I don't know if you believe this. Do you believe that most voters have an ideological backbone of any kind?
I think they should, but they
No, I agree
probably
with you that
don't.
they should.
They should.
I don't think they do.
Yeah. Well, this is the heart of remember that conversation we had with P.F. Young a long time ago?
No.
It
I
was
know
it
it
was a
happened, but I
yeah,
couldn't tell you what it was about.
oh, by the way, holy shit, does that guy hate people with tiny hats? Whew, things have changed
Oh,
over
he's an
there.
anti-Semite. Yep.
Oh my God.
He's crazy.
Jesus. That
And this can, just an aside, and this can
yeah,
maybe be
this is a huge tangent, but
yeah, this might be a point of like we shake hands on this. Anti-Semitism is on the rise everywhere, and it's crazy.
oh yeah. It's wild out there.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I'll tell you, I mean, I had a lovely conversation with him for like an hour and 45 minutes about nothing to do with Israel. And then I was like, hey man, I gotta go. And he's like, before you go, what do you think about Israel? And it just turned into this like death spiral of a bloodbath after that.
There was a time in Twitch poll where it was a joke. It was a running joke that you couldn't have any debate except for it became a trans debate. Trans issues would be brought up no matter what the topic was. Doesn't matter, right? Court packing? No, we're going to talk about trans issues. You want to talk about I don't know, like fucking foreign policy? Nope, we're going to talk about trans issues. That has been replaced with Israel stuff.
Yep. It's always the new
Israel-Palestine
thing.
is the trans debate of Twitch poll now. It doesn't matter what debate you're having,
Yeah.
Israel and Palestine is coming up, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to be debating that.
I laughed my ass off because I was trying to explain to him, like I was getting into the natural rights thing, and I was like, I view natural rights as the flowering of the Judeo-Christian tradition. And he's like, Christian, like let's remove the word Judeo. And I was like, oh, that's a warning sign. But anyway, that's I digress, because it's like, okay, you couldn't even let me use the term. Yeah, I don't know. I think that the reason I brought that up is that, to go back to our conversation, is that fundamentally I do believe that America's a creedal or propositional nation. And when you believe that, then you're locked into a particular philosophy. It's not a random philosophy, it's that philosophy. If you're a creedal or philosophic nation and then you abandon the philosophy, you don't really have much left. That's kind of the thing, right, at that point. And my concern is that I agree with you. I don't think people are ideologically armored in this uniquely American way sufficiently. But that was, again, part of the progressive project. It was expressly if you look at the writings of John Dewey and Woodrow Wilson, their goal was to teach differently and to avoid this type of anarchistic, anachronistic, Newtonian
I was about to say,
thinking.
anarchistic was not part of the founding thing.
Anachronistic.
Okay.
They overtly and expressly were attempting to move beyond this worldview, and I don't know that as Americans we get to. I don't think we get to do that and still be America on the other side of it.
I think that let me say it this way, because you're going to yell at me, because the example that comes to mind is Reagan and his famous speech, City on the Hill, and how that was part of the American creed. And I believe it was this idea that anyone could come from anywhere and become American, right? That was what it meant to be an American. Is we got people from all over Europe, from all other countries that could come into America's shore and become American. And we all haven't been perfect on that. We had slavery, for example, right? That's a big, easy one, right? Like we've never lived up to our ideals perfectly, but we had these ideals that we would shoot for. And nowadays, people call Reagan a commie, right? Because of his speeches on these things. And heritage Americanism has become a fungus, a mold on the right that is dangerous in the way that I
Mhm.
think the DSA is a danger to the left, right? It is fundamentally eroding the building blocks of what it means to be American. But that's coming from people on the right, right? It's coming from people, the heritage American people specifically, who say you
Mhm.
can't be American unless you've been here for X amount of years. It's insane.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny because I mean, maybe you just don't remember the conversation. The it was a bad one because I had a bad mic back then. But the reason that you and I were talking to PF Young was that we were arguing that it was in fact useful to police what James Lindsay had coined the woke right, and I was on your side in the
Yeah,
conversation. So it seems unlikely that you're going to get pushback from me about the Heritage Americans type.
sure. But
The
that's just an example of where I
yeah,
think that, like, I understand that you pay it
yeah,
lip service, much like Josiah. Josiah will pay lip service to the threat the DSA represents. But if I look at all his videos, there's none that I can see where he's calling that out. It's Trump bad, like 100 billion videos
Oh,
on Trump's bad.
why do you think
He needs to call it out,
no, why do you think people like,
just like you need to call it the right. Just to be clear.
why do you think people like me and Rob and Andrew are going so hard in the paint on the Charlie Kirk thing?
I couldn't even begin to guess why Andrew and Rob are doing it. I think that you do it because you just fundamentally disagree with. Like, I view you as a more honest actor than
Yeah.
Wilson
Well,
or
I
like.
think they are they are A, the conspiracy theorists are just wrong and crazy, and that's important.
Yeah, yeah,
B, like the man died, as you recall, like we were on stream together when it happened, and it was like I think it's an event that stands out in a lot of people's minds for obvious reasons.
sure.
But C, that is the current fulcrum of one of the fights on the right. Like amongst the factions on the right, one of the fights is the right going to be team conspiracy theorist who just makes up shit about Egyptian planes and fucking secret Mossad agents in the is it going to be that kind of QAnon adjacent party in the next cycle? Or is it not gonna be? Is it gonna be more of a
Sure,
TPUSA
I
type
would I
party?
would agree that that's
And
why you're
that
doing
that's
it.
that's a fight
Yeah,
that's a fight worth having.
I would agree with it. That's why you're doing it. I don't think Wilson is doing it for that reason. I think Wilson sees an easy dunk and an easy way to promote his brand. That's why he's
Well,
doing it.
I mean, I know you don't like Andrew, I do
Nope.
like Andrew. We're gonna have different we don't need to litigate whether
Sure.
we take Andrew at face value. But like, the point is that, though, that, like, those fights are happening
Yeah,
on
but
the right. They might not have the same vector
you're
that you're
doing it
looking for.
you're doing it now because it look, if you
No, I'm
guys
do
wanted to fight against.
I'm doing it now
I'm not
because I
talking you
oh, I
specifically.
okay, because
I'm
just
talking the
for
right
me,
in general.
if we're
Yeah,
talking
sorry,
to
sorry, sorry, sorry.
if we're talking to
I'm painting
audiences,
with two specific brush. I'm
just to
talking the
clarify,
right in general, okay?
I started when I started my channel, the overt thing I said when I started it was, I don't think the ideas and values I have will find any purchase on the left. I've tried. I don't think it's going to happen. I think
Okay.
there is room for them on
To
the
my point.
right. And I would like to start something so that when we get to 28 and a post Trump world, I have some momentum. So this is absolute, and this is not for you. This
Again,
is for the audience in
sure,
the
sure,
spirit
sure.
of talking to audiences. But that,
Fair
that
enough.
was the overt mission statement of the channel and its reason for being.
Okay. Fair enough. No, fair enough. That's a good correction on your end. I won't include you in this. But the right has been talking about Obama being a secret Muslim, Clinton being a secret communist. All these conspiracy theories have been on the right. It's entrenched, man. It's entrenched.
Yeah.
And this is just the latest kind of manifestation of that problem that the right has. And the reason it's being tackled is because it takes away a weapon you guys have against the left. And it takes away the weapon that some of the people on the right have against the left, which is Charlie Kirk. The official thing is that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk, and Tyler Robinson was on the left, right? That's the official story, right? And because this conspiracy theory takes chunks out of that, it defangs that. That is why many are fighting on the right are fighting against that, not because they have any problems with conspiracy theories. I would argue that many of them don't, because they play with conspiracy theories and have for decades. So
Well,
I
I
think you're
mean,
misdiagnosing this.
I'm sure people have different and potentially mixed motivations. I think it is good for the right to have a strong Turning Point USA. I think so. I think it is good, but I mean, the ultimate point I was making, Wick, is that these fights are being fought. They're not. It's not like they're not being fought. You might not like the people fighting them, and you might not like the
No,
motivations
no,
of the people
I
fighting
hope
them.
you win in
But
this fight.
I would
give it, like, I
expect you
hope you
not
win.
to, because you're not on the right, right? So
Yeah, but I hope
like,
I hope you win against this
yeah.
this particular conspiracy theory.
By the
I
way,
just wish you
I've
guys had fought against like Pizzagate
like,
and stuff like that.
me and Destiny don't get along particularly well. I hope he fucking trashes the DSA in a bunch of debates, because they deserve to lose. I think we can at least agree on that these are fights worth having, and we can appreciate the people who are
Yep.
having them, even if we don't agree on other
No,
things.
sure. I want
Yeah.
I want the truth to prevail, and in the case of Charlie Kirk, it's just true that Tyler Robinson killed him.
Yeah.
At least that's all the evidence suggests that
All the
that
evidence
seems
points
to
that
be
way.
the case. And that's just true. And this is the thing. Like, a lot of people will attack me for being like either, oh, you're secretly Republican, which I get a lot these days, or oh, you're just a commie, you're a mask on I've seen, like, I watched the video that you made calling me out or saying that you wanted a conversation. I don't know if you call it a call out video. It really wasn't.
It wasn't really a call out video, but
There was a
it was
little call out, but
it was a reminder of that. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, August 15th is coming up.
Yeah, I read I read your comments, bro. Your audience, or at least the ones that commented, think I'm a secret commie that I'm masking on, right? A good portion of them were of that nature, right? That Wick is a
Sure.
liar. That Wick is actually secretly this communist socialist
Yeah.
thing.
What
Those
are your
kinds of conspiracy theories are
Mhm.
part and parcel of the right. I don't think you can escape them. Now, it's
Wick,
good that you're fighting this one.
Wick, my brother in Christ. On X, one of your fans commented, Ryan is the kind of guy who should be sent to camps. If you looked at your comments right now, are they going to be
They
wildly
won't be kind to
favorable,
you.
talking
That's
about my
true. They
my
won't be kind
lovely
to you. That's a fair
intellect,
point.
my scholarly aptitude, my mastery of Supreme Court case law? I don't think so. I think they're saying some fucked up shit about me because they view me as somebody who is a gateway drug to rightward
Yeah,
thinking.
you're holding the door open for very bad people.
The way my chat views you as a gateway drug for fucking commies. So, we are in many senses occupying mirrored positions across the aisle from each other, which is what makes these conversations particularly interesting. But I'm sure your chat says all the same shit about me that my chat says about you.
Well, let's see. I have no animosity to Ryan. Fat Camp, LOL. Buy more. We have disagreements. Ryan is the kind of guy who should have had pizza and sit on the couch. Mean comment, bro, you're dumb as fuck. Faulkner says because you lie to them. Headless Chicken does say you're a gateway drug to fascists. He does say that. He said directly. And this other guy's like, yes, the gulag for Ryan. So some of these are funny though. Look. Some of them, look, I'm okay. Here's the thing. I have no problem.
I'm not gonna get
me.
my feelings about your fucking
I have no problem with
comments.
people assaulting me, but just try to be funny about it, okay? Just try to make me laugh. If you make me laugh, you can say anything you like.
Bro,
right? As long as it's funny.
I fucking debated Destiny a shit ton of times. Like, if I gave a fuck about getting mogged by DGG psychos who are like swarming with their insane comments after a conversation, this would be not a thing I would do.
By them. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, when you got like, my videos got like, let's be realistic about size. Like, my videos got like, I've got 5K subs. My video gets like 5K views. Destiny puts out multiple 100,000 view videos. I'm gonna have a rough time in the comments for a couple days.
I've had DGG come at me too.
The dog pile is gonna be intense for a few days, and I'm not gonna pretend that my fans outnumber theirs. Like, why would I?
My point here is that the right has, I would consider, a very large problem with conspiracy theories, with how they treat people who aren't fully on board. They aren't pluralists in many ways, right? They aren't. And I think that while the left obviously has its problems, obviously, right? I think that the issues that I'm facing on the left with the DSA are dangerous, but I think that it's pitching the tent on the right is just like I said in my promo tweet, like I wanted your perspective from being part of, or at least on the side of, a party that has already lost to these extremists. Like you
Well,
guys
I
have
just don't think
lost to
that's
your
cor
extremists.
I don't think that's correct is the problem, but a lot of this
Yeah,
comes down
I know you
a
don't,
lot of a
but
lot of this comes down to, like, disagreements that are fairly fundamental. Like, like, I don't know if you ever watched any of, like, 𝕵𝖔𝖎𝖏 and I did a bunch of debates about, like, executive theory at one point, like,
no, I did not
way
watch
back in the
those.
day. Yeah, that's gonna give you
I
fucking
do
brain rot.
not.
I
You can't make me.
Yeah,
You
but,
can't
like,
make me.
if you look at, like, Federalist Society people, like, when Trump won some decisions about executive power, about firing executive officers, for example, the common sentiment was, boy, that's a lot of power to give to the executive, which the Constitution does. And if that concerns you, we should shrink the amount of executive
We should put
agencies
more.
back to their normal size. Like
Well,
the unitary
no.
executive types are not all about executive power, but they think, and I think, that if you give the executive power, you're giving it to the president constitutionally. The the solution then is to grant less power in the first place, whereas the left wing solution is to grant increasing power to the executive, but to diffuse that power to a politically unaccountable group of bureaucrats and experts,
Well,
and
no.
which is their preferred solution.
Hold on. That's part of like uh that is a liberal value, the separation of powers. That power in the state's hands should be divided, constrained, and accountable. Okay?
Separation
By
between which
dividing the
branches?
power between the executive and these institutions, it lessens the chance that an authoritarian will be able to abuse that power. Now, you can argue that there should be more accountability for these unaccountable, as you put them, right? I'm going to use your words here, these unaccountable, unelected bureaucratic agencies. That's fair. But your method of doing so just undivided, like it centralizes power in a way that is making the DSA, their mouth is watering because all they need to do now is get into that position of executive power, and then you have nothing to stop them. And their mouths are water. The DSA is looking at what the right is doing to the executive authority, and it's like, we
Yeah,
can't wait to
of
get in
course.
there,
Be, be,
right?
but Wick, what if you look at the history, the creation of administrative agencies to govern huge swaths of the country by, the hopefully benign government of their, governance of their expertise was an overtly progressive project that came out of the
Well,
Wilson
it's
administration. It
I
was
don't I disagree.
okay.
I
So
disagree. It
it's
was
not
an
it's
attempt
well,
to
no, no,
divide power.
it's not disagreeable. That's a historic fact. It
No,
happened in the Wilson administration.
this idea that by getting in bureaucrats to diversify, right, the power granted to the executive is in line with liberal values.
Okay.
It's a
So
limit on
if you're
state power.
if we're separating powers, which branch are we separating the power from?
The executive towards we can diversify within a branch. So, for example, the legislative branch has two houses. The
Mhm.
power is diversified between the House of Representatives and the Senate, and yet they are from the
Well,
same branch, which is the legislative branch. Correct?
and
Right? This is just basic stuff.
and the Constitution disagrees with you about the way that you can do that with the executive. So now what? Are you going to change the Constitution to allow you to continue the diversification?
I think that we can put laws into place that would be constitutionally viable, that would allow us to diversify the executive power. I'm not a lawyer.
I
I'm not an
doubt it after this
expert.
Supreme Court term. The Supreme Court did, other than the Federal Reserve,
Yeah.
which,
Other
but
than
which
other than the one that disproves my point, yeah, all the other
no,
points, yeah, like they
th-
can
th-
absolutely make these carve outs.
they made a rule for the Federal Reserve that has no actual correspondence or theory that is in any way in line with the rule they articulated otherwise, which is that other than the Federal Reserve, the president can fire the head of basically whatever fucking agency he
Well, one of
wants.
the things that the Supreme
So,
Court does, and I think you'd agree with me, is they use pragmatism in some of their decision makings and look at how these things would actually
well,
have an effect on. I
there
forget
there
the
are
technical term for this, but there's a.
there are certainly times that they do. This was, I think, better explained by the fact that it was just a different collection of judges. Like, the justices were just a different combo. But my point is, you prefer to have the executive power diluted, which is unsurprising because that's the standard left-leaning position and has been forever. It was the progressive position.
No, that's
Now
a
it's
liberal. To be clear, that's a liberal position.
well, it wasn't. It was the progressive position. It is today what you would call the liberal position, but at the time it was the progressive position. Today it's the status quo, but that was the historic evolution
Well,
of it.
to be clear, I would
But
argue that the position before that the quote unquote liberals had were not actually a liberal position, and the progressives were more liberal
okay.
at that time than the actual quote unquote
Well,
liberals.
but
Same with
you but
slavery, right? It
but
would.
you see how this evolves, right? Now the Constitution, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, says you are wrong, and if you give this power to executive agencies, the president can exert control over them.
Except in the
It
case
turn
of one.
Except in the case of one. So now what?
So now we can make more
With the
that
exception
would
of
also get
one,
carve outs.
you are wrong. So now can we start getting rid of these agencies? Or are we going to seek to change the Constitution so you can be right?
I think that changing the Constitution in this case would be more in line with the liberal value of the diversification of power.
Okay, so there's
Because
another.
again, my principle isn't just the Constitution, because the Constitution built within it is a mechanism to change itself, right? Built
Mhm.
within the Constitution is a mechanism to adjust it, to make amendments to it. And one amendment I think that would be great to make is to make the executive branch more accountable and undo the Supreme Court decision that gave him basically immunity, bar none for. And I know you're a lawyer, so you understand that decision far more than I do. But from a layman's perspective, that was just a terrible, terrible choice. And two, to also amend it so we diversify power within the executive branch so that one man does not hold the authority that someone, a Trump or Trump-like candidate or a DSA-like candidate in the future, hopefully not, but maybe, right, could ever come in and wield that. Because we don't want to
Okay.
see, and you wouldn't want to see, a DSA candidate wield the type of power that Trump does, do you?
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to figure out what you're saying because it's like this is obviously a position I disagree with, but I want to make sure I get it right. So you would like to have the presidency redefined so that he is less of an all-encompassing executive and is more accountable to the other branches.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the DSA position on that. They would like to replace the president with an executive chosen by and subordinate to Congress. Would that be in line with what you want to do?
No.
Why not? What's the difference?
I think that what
Like
when the
what's
because
what's the
we can
what's the
look at
what's
the
the
we can look.
difference
Hold
between
on,
the two
I'm
things?
going to answer your question. We don't have to take the single brick that you're pointing to. We can look at the wall. We can look at the totality of what the DSA wants, and we can point to that, and we can say, in the context of what they want overall, this would be a terrible idea, right? But in the context of what I'm saying, which is a liberal governance where executive power is, and to be clear, the Constitution does this too, right? The Constitution puts limits on executive power, right? We would like more limits
Well,
on this
it puts
executive
limits
power.
on the sphere of executive power, not on the executive's power within that sphere.
I mean, but that limits executive power, correct?
Yes, but in
Yes.
a very
For
different
example,
way
the
than
Congress has the power of the purse, correct?
in a very different way than the one that you're describing. Like there are outer limits, but within those limits, he is the executive. There is
I
no
think
other
that's
executive.
the unitary theory, but I disagree that that's
Well, it's the unitary
constitutional.
theory that has been blessed by the U.S. Supreme Court and is
For now,
currently
until the U.S. Supreme Court changes, in which case
okay.
it won't be.
So, but this is
But
what
I'm
I
saying as a
mean. Like
layman, right? Like this is a problem like with the current makeup of the Supreme Court. I think that they are acting unconstitutionally. And now
on the
I
basis of
understand,
what?
right? Say it one more time. When
On
it
the
comes to
basis of
the
what?
unitary executive theory issue, right? For example.
What? Why do you think that's wrong?
Well, do you think that their decision on birthright citizenship was wrong?
I disagreed. Yeah,
Yeah. So we can disagree with the Supreme Court, correct?
we
Both of
can, but
us.
I'm gonna give a legal reason. I'm asking what
Well,
yours is.
we've had that argument before. I remember
Not
that.
not about birthright citizenship, about unitary executive theory. You said you think it's wrong. Why?
Yes, I think unitary executive theory is wrong. And we can, again, if you want to have this specific debate, we can set it up for another time.
Well,
I don't have the
no,
specific
my point is
arguments to
that
give you.
I know we're not going to have this debate now. My point is that you think it's wrong, but you don't think it's wrong for a legal reason. You think it's wrong because it disagrees
I think
with
it's wrong for a
policy preferences.
constitutional reason. I think the constitutional reason has provided limits. For example, one of the laws that has been written, right? Congress has the power to declare war in the Constitution. Is that correct? Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. We have carved out a law to allow the president, in order to every 60 days, I believe. What's the
The
you
War
should know.
Powers Resolution?
Yes. Yes. I think that unfortunately is being abused by our executive, right? Currently. And so we need to limit that, right? We need to limit that. That is a sphere of power that we have given to him through our legislation that I think is wrong, and we should take it away. Okay? I think that the ability, and we can see this now, to just every 60 days
Yeah.
renew this has been disastrous, right?
Well, it's a stupid law for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is probably unconstitutional and almost certainly unenforceable. So it's just kind of silly in that regard. And every president has taken the position that it's unconstitutional. Every president said that since it was enacted. All of them take the position that, like, whenever they send in these status reports, all of them write, I'm sending this to Congress because I want to, not because you can make me, in legalese. Because none of them accept this limit. But the question is what the delegation of military power is between the branches there, and that's more of a gray area than it's a complicated topic, but it's not as simple as
That's
you were
why,
laying it out.
again, this is
But
why I think,
but my point is that when you talked about unitary executive theory being wrong, you disagreed, but you disagreed not on the basis of having done the analysis. You disagreed on the basis of what your preferred view of the Constitution would
no,
be.
I disagreed on liberal principle grounds. The principle of division of power and limits on state power. That is the bedrock on which I am saying that the executive branch has too much power, is because
Mhm.
it has insufficient limits
Well,
on its ability to enact its will within its spheres.
and by and large, who gave the president those powers?
The Supreme Court over various years.
By and large, it was the legislature when they created all these executive
That too.
agencies,
That,
right?
well,
They
yes and no, but yes.
well, when they create an executive agency and then they say, "Executive, thou shalt go out and enforce this law, and here is the funding and tools to do it," you increase the sphere of
Yes,
executive
that
power.
that has been
And I agree with
a
you that
mistake.
that was enabled. Oh, yes,
That
I
has been
agree
a
with it.
mistake. That
Tremendous
is
mistake.
bad. We need to stop that. But the problem
I
is
I agree.
I don't see this happening. I don't see anyone stopping it.
Well, the good news for you is that this is why the right cheers on the Department of Education being torn asunder. This is why the right cheers on massive deregulation.
Oh, no, 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 no.
This is why the right cheers on the death of
That's
Chevron deference.
that's not
This is what
true. The
this is
reason the right cheers that on is because it centralizes the authority into one man.
no.
Yes, it
I mean,
centralizes power. It has been a hold on.
does, but
Let me finish. It has
that's
been
not
a
why we're cheering it.
goal for years of the right to centralize executive power in a way that allows them not to be deferential to the Department of Education for these other
Yeah.
other such agencies. They want unitary executive, a single man, to be able to wield these decisions and bypass any kind of check, right?
As
As much as possible. This has been
we
an
want
illiberal
it's
action and sought after, and yes, unfortunately aided by some people on the left, in
it
order
is
to get the ability to enact their will with as little checks as possible. That's what's
that
happened for years.
what the right wants is the president to have the executive authority he is entitled to under the Constitution,
Yeah.
which is all of it.
That's,
All of it. It's his
yes,
authority.
they want to centralize authority. That's what they want to do. They want to centralize authority. This is a problem.
And we want to get rid of all these insane expansions of executive authority that largely have been enacted by the left over time that we don't think should exist.
But these
We don't-
expansions came with checks, which I agree weren't sufficient.
unconstitutional checks.
Again, I agree with you that these weren't sufficient checks, but they came and were given to him with checks for the idea and the express purpose of limiting this sole executive power. Now, it didn't work out that way, unfortunately, because of the end of Chevron deference, right? And other
who would be
ways.
wielding the power then?
Say-
The experts at the agency.
I think that people who are experts in the field do better generally with wielding and making those sorts of decisions.
And this is the exact argument that Woodrow Wilson made when he ushered in this style of governance, that we should be governed by these benign experts. It happens to be unconstitutional. It happens to be a problematic move away from American liberalism and away from the form of government that our founders gave to us. You like it better.
Hold on,
And
no,
it's fine. No, it's totally fine that you like it
because
better,
I like,
but
it's
like
because liberalism to work has to have limits on executive authority.
Why?
The state power. Otherwise, a single individual, a monarch, a tyrant can come in. We fought a war about this, brother, right?
No.
To come in and make decisions and ignore the will of those who are governed. Thus, the individual liberties and rights of individuals to have a say in who is making the decisions, right? And who is making the laws, is who is doing these things, is lessened because a single executive can, by fiat, say just whatever, and he has nothing to check them. Now, the checks aren't perfect. The checks aren't perfect, right? Like, there's problems with these things. We can fix those problems, I feel. And I can't give you the solution off the top of my head, come down from heaven. But, like, I think that the idea that we're going to solve the problem of bureaucratic rule by centralizing all this power in a single hand is anti-liberal. It's an anti-liberal stance.
Again, you've missed the thrust. This is the classic leftist. And I'm saying leftist because it comes from the progressive wing of the party historically. We're going to create a thing that breaks the system, and then we're going to ask for more and more and more of our policies to keep band-aiding it. The reason that our founders weren't afraid of centralizing executive authority, and in fact did centralize executive authority, is because the federal government had limited powers back then. It was limited. It couldn't do a lot of things. So the executive wasn't terrifying because he couldn't impact you on a day-to-day level the way he can today. The problem is we've had 100 years of governments specifically engineered to break all the limits on federal authority that ever existed, which was enacted by the progressives over and over and over again. And now we get to the end of the rainbow and they're like, goddamn executive unitary theory, those fucking rightists with their crazy view that the Constitution should be enforced. Like, they broke the system and now they're complaining about the result of breaking the system, which they did.
Hold on, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Like, I would grant you that the left has, in some cases, gotten it wrong when it comes to expanding executive authority. I would point to instances like Obama's overuse of executive orders, right? And other things like that, which normalized this kind of idea that the executive has all this power, can ignore certain things that they never did ignore before. Like, that's been a problem. I would agree with you. But the people who are doing this the most today are Republicans. Trump is the king of abusing executive authority in order to go after his political enemies, in order to try to get around and ignore the courts, in order to try to loot the treasury with his scheme to steal, what was it, $10 billion from the IRS and things like that, right? Like, he is abusing executive power in a way that we have not seen. So to point at the left and say, look what Trump's doing, it's the left's fault, I think is missing the forest, right, for the trees. And we can look at the overall thrust of Bush, right, both Bushes, both Bush Sr. and both Bush Jr. We look at Reagan, right, and this, again, Reagan's big thing was like getting rid and cutting red tape, getting rid of these bureaucracies and things like that. And he wanted to centralize authority. It's been a plan that they've had for decades. And yes, some people on the left have done that too, right? That is not the argument I'm making. The argument I'm making tonight is that the right defined executive.
The right believes in the constitutionally defined executive
as
confirmed by the Supreme Court this term multiple times.
Until they don't.
The issue here, Wick, is that the left has historically created enormous expansions of federal and executive authority on the misguided assumption that the experts in charge of these things would always agree with them because they are the truth bearers, and they, as we started this conversation, tend to have a strong grip on the education system. Now, those tools have been created and other people are playing with them, which I get is a bummer, and it's a good reason for putting the tools back in the toolbox. And you can find endless examples of me saying we should put the tools back in the toolbox, but it wasn't the right that took them out. The creation of the administrative state is a left project. The frustration that they have is that now it's being used differently. And I would love to have a smaller federal government that was limited and within its constitutional sphere. I would love to revisit some of the horrifying decisions made by FDR.
You can say that all day. You can say, I'm not stabbing you, and I can still see the knife going in and out, brother. Like, you could say, I would love it if we put these tools back in the box, but since they're out, we have to use them and expand upon their use and use them even harder than our enemies ever have. And we have to continue to do this as a reciprocity to teach the left a lesson. Like, I saw you make that argument with Dev, right? And with, I believe, Pisco, is that you would pack the courts now in order to stop the left from packing the courts, right? You would do these things before the left does it to punish them.
You're literally making things up and misquoting me, and it's
okay. I can't find that quote. I can't find that clip of you saying this.
That we should pack the courts
Get on
first.
it, gangs.
No. What you'll find.
You said it'd be justified to do so. Yes.
I said that it would be if the norm was broken and the left packed the courts. Then if the right packed the courts, I would not have the same objection afterwards.
Yes, that's exactly.
That is not what you just said. You just said that we should do it first. That is not what you just said.
I'm saying that you think, in your argument,
I need you to admit that what you just said
was
wrong.
I need you to admit that you just made it up.
The thing I said, no, Wick,
we can find the clip. We can find the clip of you saying that you think it would be justified for the right to pack the court under certain conditions. Can we? Yes or no? I'm going to pull a Pisco. Can we find that clip?
No. Wait, okay, I need to.
Yes or no? Can we find that clip?
We're going to resolve this. Is a
yes or no? Can we find that clip?
You said to me first. The transcript. Can someone give? Can we go back and see what Wick actually said this stream? Because I guarantee you, Wick, what you just said to me was that the right should do it first, and I said no. I never said that because I never did, and have been very clear about that point. You said first. You said
okay.
First.
If you want me to take away first. There, it doesn't change that you think that the left, because you've argued earlier in this. Hold on, stop. You can't filibuster here.
The thing you said was wrong.
No, it was incorrect in a small detail. You're like, you said the murderer had a green shirt and he had a red shirt. Therefore, the thing that you said was entirely wrong.
It is not.
That's your argument that you're making. You were saying that I said, hey, this guy is murdering that girl. and he's got a red shirt on, and you're saying, well, bro, he has a green shirt, not a red shirt. So obviously he's not murdering that girl. But he's obviously murdering that girl. You're pointing to a small detail to deflect from the larger point that I'm making, and you are continue to filibuster because you know that if you allow me to speak, that it won't work. Right? If I can continue,
example, if a guy
nope, you're gonna keep filibustering because you know you can't get, you can't let me speak, because if I speak, you'll be seen to be wrong. You know you can't do that,
and you
you have to interrupt me, because you have to interrupt me, because if I was allowed to speak, you would be proven wrong.
Wildly disingenuous right now, which is out of character for you.
I'm not being disingenuous. If I don't normally behave a way, it's probably the case that I'm not behaving that way right now. Correct?
You said something that was meaningfully wrong to me.
That is not true.
It is a meaningful distinction in my eyes. I corrected you, and you spurred the fuck out. You spurred the fuck out when
I'm not
you
spurring
said
out. You're not allowing me to talk. And there's a reason, dear audience, that he is not allowing me to speak. There is a reason that he is not allowing me to speak. There is a reason.
Hey, wait.
Because your overall point,
remember that
justification. See, still not doing it. Still not doing it.
That you said
still
that,
not allowing me to speak.
That you were going to platform all these CSAM.
Still not allowing me to have a conversation. You just want to filibuster the whole time. You don't let me get this out. I can talk longer than you,
did something fucking up.
I can continue to talk.
Admit that you made a mistake, and then you jumped on me on it.
Because you know that if I got my whole point out, that you would be kind of looking a little silly.
Wick.
No, you're not looking.
The difference between these points,
I'm going to keep going,
was meaningful.
If you keep talking, I'm going to keep talking, because you got to let me speak in this case.
Okay.
And I know you're hoping
I'm going to give you
I will not remember
what
I'm about to say.
I'm going to ask you. Make your goddamn point. Go. Make your point.
Okay. So you said that, and I'm going to quote as best I can, that if the left were to do a thing like court packing or filibuster or what have you, or if they were to do a thing, that the right would be entirely justified in doing it back. Is that true? Is that correct?
Sorry, I'm trying to find the quote because I'm trying to find out what you actually said. I wanted you to make your point. I assumed it was for the audience and not for me, given
we're going piece by piece.
The nature of the conversation.
Did you or did you not say that the left, specifically, if they were to try to pack the courts, that the right would be justified in doing it?
That's not what you said.
I'm asking you. Found the clip? Headless chicken. Give me the clip. Thank you. We can play it right now. DM it to me.
Is it the clip of what you asked me? Because that's the clip I want to see.
I know you don't want to talk about what you actually said. That's fine.
No, I want to see the clip of what you asked me, which is what we're talking about.
Look, give me the clip, Headless Chicken. Just DM it to me, please, sir. When he gets to me. We'll see. That's clip.
Wick, even if the distinction is not meaningful to you, can you at least concede it is meaningful to me?
I don't know what's meaningful to you or not. The question isn't whether it's meaningful to you, it's whether it's meaningful in my eyes.
Okay. So, for example, if I saw two people in the street and I said, you think it's justified to shoot this person. Well, shit, there are situations I do think that's justified. But then you say, it's justified to shoot them first before they did anything forceful or violent. No, that's not what I said. First is really fucking meaningful in this context. So, yeah, there is a distinction, Wick, between what you said and what you freaked out about.
Would there be a distinction if I said...
It's a meaningful distinction.
I disagree, and I'll tell you why. I'll use a different analogy. If a man was raping a girl, and then you said, well, damn, if he's raping that girl, I get to rape his daughter or something. Would that be okay?
No.
Okay, great. We can understand how in court packing,
that's a violation of natural law and not a norm violation. Court packing is a norm violation, Wick. It's a norm violation.
It's a norm violation that would lead to such a destructive thing that you, again, have said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that it would destroy the legal system. Is that a correct paraphrase?
So, yes,
yes.
Wick.
And again, by advocating doing it indeed to respond, it would further destroy the system, would it not?
The point I made was merely this. I don't think we should do things that usher in the Mad Max Thunderdome. If we're in the Mad Max Thunderdome, the rules change. Once the norm violation
I
occurs, like
disagree.
what? No, and wait, this is ridiculous. Hold on, like we. Do you think that it's inappropriate for the left or the right to appoint judges with only 51 votes because it was a historic norm violation?
I would like to roll that back.
Okay,
Yes.
but do you think it's wrong when they do it today? Like, so
Yes. Yes.
if
I said that
so,
before when you asked
so
me.
so
I
if the
think
so
it is
if
a norm violation
so
in
if
such
so
a case that has led to a tit for
okay,
tat race to the bottom where we
yes.
are having a huge issue,
So
and one
when
side
the
has to say no and stop it.
so when the next time the Democrats get power, your position is they should voluntarily not appoint any judge to any position unless they can get to 60 votes.
Of course not.
That's because the norm has been broken, right?
No, because here, hold. What? Can you repeat what you said? Maybe I misheard.
Okay. The norm historically was that you need 60 votes to appoint a judge to any level. That norm has been broken. I don't think, and I don't think you think, that either side should hold themselves to the standard that no longer exists.
No, I disagree. I think that when we get back into power, when the Democrats back into power, what I would advocate for and what I would like to happen is a return to that norm. I want to reinstitute that rule because that rule
Okay.
I felt was good and protected us from kind of this like tyranny of the majority situation where we can just enact justices at a simple majority of 51.
Okay.
I think
By
that
the way,
that is bad.
I don't have a clip, but one of my chatter went back and found the quote, and he said, "Is that you would pack the courts now in order to stop the left from packing the courts, right? You would do these things before the left does it to punish them," was what you asked me, which I am not in favor of, and that is not a position I've ever
But
taken,
your
which is why I
but
reacted
your
the way I did.
actual position is that in the case of the left doing the bad thing, packing the court, you would find it justified. I don't know if you'd advocate it for it. I don't know if you would or not.
Okay.
But you would find
I'm
it
happy to
justified
go
for
down
the
this road.
right
Can you
to
just
do it.
acknowledge, can you, before you go down this road, can you acknowledge
I don't know
that
why
is
you're
why
not answering my
that
question.
is because, Wick, you were incredibly bizarre to me about a thing that you
It's not
misrepresented my position,
bizarre.
and then
It's
I
something where you're
corrected you.
trying to paint
So,
this out
Wick,
a small error in
can you
how
at
I
least
quoted you
admit that
and acting as if that's meaningful. It's not.
misrepresented my position?
It's not
You
meaningfully
misrepresented my position, and I
misrepresented.
corrected you.
It's not meaningfully misrepresented.
You don't think
No.
it's
I'm
meaningfully
explaining
different?
why.
You don't
I'm
wait, hold
explaining
on, no,
why.
hold on. You don't think no. Just let me be clear. You
Okay,
don't
you're good.
think
You're
it's
good. You're gonna
meaningfully
filibuster in bad
different
faith this.
about
Go ahead.
whether
Tell me what I said. Go ahead.
I would advocate for court packing today. If I was out there today advocating for court packing, you don't think that's meaningfully different than my position?
No, because you would be okay with court packing under certain conditions. You just have different conditions than what 𝕊𝖎 does, but you're still in favor of court packing, motherfucker.
I'm not in favor of court packing.
You
I
are,
am in
because
favor,
you would say that
I
it
am
was
in
justified.
favor-
It would be justified to
it would-
do if the left
yes,
did it.
if the norm
Did you
is
say that?
gone-
Yes or
if the
no?
norm, if the norm
If
is
the left
violated,
packs
yes.
the court,
if the norm
would you
is
be
gone, the
in
norm
favor
is gone.
of or
If the no-
justify
I've
the
answered
right
the question
packing the
5
court?
times. You want me to answer it again?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. If the norm is gone, then the norm is gone. The norm, we do not hold anybody to that standard in any circumstance, that they have to maintain norms that no longer exist.
So
And
yes,
that's why,
the answer is yes.
yes, and that's
So
why
you
I asked
advocate
you,
for court packing under certain conditions.
That's why I asked you about the fact that both parties appoint judges with 51 votes now, and we understand that that is part of the game because the norm no longer exists. That's why I fight to preserve the norm.
But it would not.
Because once it's gone, baby.
But it
It's
would not be.
gone.
No, I disagree with that. And I think that this is why it's not a meaningful difference. I think it's meaningfully the same, functionally the same. If you advocate for court packing under certain conditions, you just have a different set of conditions.
Okay.
My advocacy is that if the right were to pack the court, if Trump were to come down to say, we're going to pack the court, baby, I don't think that the left should retaliate. I think that the left should revert it. I think that the left should unpack the court, right? That is my advocacy, not for continuing on that route and doing that thing, but to do the opposite and to restore the norm and establish the norm. That's what again, where it's not a meaningful difference whether you want to do it first or second. I think that for me, it is a meaningfully the same, right? It is just meaningless, right? If
Well,
you just
the
you just want to, yeah, you're a
to
court
no,
packer. You just want to pack it
no.
under different
The
conditions.
the first of all, changing the composition of the court is court packing. So reversing it is a form of court packing.
Oh, you would never advocate
Changing
for
the
this.
composition of the court
In which
is
case,
if
in
you
which
change the number of seats on the Supreme Court, that is the classic definition of court packing.
So, in what you're saying is that if the right were to pack the court and add 4 more justices, and the left were to undo that, the left would also be packing the court?
Uh, yes, that would be court
Okay,
packing,
I don't
which you
see that
said
as
that you
court
would be
packing
opposed
in
to in
any
any
meaningful sense.
circumstance.
I don't think that's court packing in a meaningful sense. To
Okay.
revert to the norm, to reestablish the norm that already existed is not norm breaking, right?
Okay, so
Is it
you
not? Am I not
wait,
correct there?
it is definitionally court packing to change the number of seats on the court. That's what court packing is. You're now ascribing some kind of intentionality to it, like when you do it for a good reason, it's not court packing.
So your argument then is that in your definition of court packing, removing a justice would be court packing.
Removing a seat would be court packing.
Yes, removing, like changing it from 9 to 8 would be court packing.
Yes, that would be court packing.
So, in your opinion, if we, or if the Republicans changed it to 13,
And Wick, that has to be court packing because you can, for example, one way the Republicans could pack the court. It doesn't work now because Roberts is not the kind of justice you would do this for. But imagine that Justice Thomas or Justice Alito was the Chief Justice. One way
I don't
you
think
could
that's
pack
what
the court
anyone means when they say pack the court, though. You understand that that's not what
okay.
anyone
let me
you have argued
let me
with
finish the hypo and then
meant?
you can explain. If Justice Alito was the Chief Justice and the Republicans removed every justice other than Alito, so now he's a one-man court, would that be court packing?
I
Justice
think it
Alito
would be
gets to make
changing
every
the
decision for the
composition of the
Supreme Court.
but I wouldn't call it court packing. I would call it fundamentally
You
altering. There would be another
you
word that I would use. Court
you would
packing implies, and this is how it's always been used, to be clear, right? You laugh at me, but when FDR threatened to pack the court, did he threaten to take away justices?
no, he's trying to add.
Yes. When Pisco's talking about packing the court, is he threatening to take away justices?
No, but he
Yes.
cites examples. But he cites examples of reducing the number of justices.
But he's not
as well as
advocating for
adding
that.
them.
He's not
He's
wanting
not
that.
advocating
He
for
is
that.
not trying
he
to do
cites
that.
them as
He is trying
examples.
specifically to pack
He
the
cites
court
them as examples.
by
Wick.
addition, which has traditionally been the way that everyone who has
Okay.
advocated for packing the court has advocated for it. So while you can maybe argue in a specific hypothetical world that we could maybe call it court packing, I think that that's playing with language.
Okay,
And
I would like
that
to. Wick,
is
I-
that is obscuring what is
hypothetically,
meaning of the
I would
court.
like to reduce the size of the court to 8, and by coincidence, that means we need to
Also,
get
can
rid
you
of
give
the
me a
most.
clip of Pisco advocating for removing a court
Wick,
justice?
let me make my point. By coincidence, we are going to, when we reduce it to 8, we have to get rid of the most recently tenured justice, of course, which means Justice Jackson is gone. Would that be court packing?
No, I think there'd be a reorganization.
Okay, so if the right eliminated Justice Jackson's seat, that would not be court packing in your view.
It would be bad. It'd be reorganization, though.
Okay, well, I mean,
Like,
I guess
look,
you can.
this
you
is
can
why
define
we
it
don't
however you
let
wanna
people
define
play
it,
with
right?
language
We-
because you're
we can
obscuring the
talk
meaning
about
of words.
the fucking shmew if
And you
want,
make it
but, like,
harder to communicate when you obscure the meaning of the words. When the word that we obviously know, as everyone has advocated, that court packing, and every example that we can cite of anyone advocating for court packing is advocating to add justices to the
No,
court. We
it's
can
to change the
intuit
number of
that
seats
the
for a political
no,
purpose.
that is not
That's-
how anyone ever has advocated for court packing.
It actually, I mean, I haven't done, I don't have my notes in front of me because I wasn't planning on having this particular debate, but I actually think there were historic examples of people limiting the court in order for political purposes. Like, for example, if there were seats that were empty, that they would leave them unfilled, or that they would then reduce the court down so that the next party wouldn't
But
have
we
those
wouldn't
seats to
call
fill.
that court packing.
Well, it was it was all part of the court packing research I did, and I think it would be considered court packing. But I mean, hysterically, if we're going to use your definition of court packing, then you shouldn't have a problem because all I would have to say is, okay, if the left packs the court, then I think the right should eliminate all those seats and get rid of those justices the second they get power back. And that's not court packing in your view. So we're good.
Do you think that that's
So we're good.
Are you telling me that that's what you meant when you answered the question on would you be okay with court packing if the left did it? Is that what you meant?
Sure.
Is that what you're arguing you mean?
I don't think the right has to go
call you a liar
more than a 6-3 majority. We have a 6-3 majority. If the left packs it to be 8-7, to be like, 8-6 or 9-6, and then the right wins and then reduces the seat to get back to a 6-3 majority, and you don't consider that court packing, I would, but you don't consider that court packing, that would solve the problem.
I'm going to ask the question again. Was that, are you saying that
No,
that is what
I didn't have
meant?
your proprietary definition of court packing in mind when I made the statement, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, you meant, when you answered the question, would it be justified for the right to pack the, or I don't know if you answered the question, you made the statement, I don't want to misquote you again, right? That you made the statement that you would be fine, or it would be justified for the right to pack the court if the left did it first. You meant addition.
I mean, I meant either, both court packing, but it's fine.
I don't believe you.
I
think you meant I think you meant adding. I think that that's what the context of the conversation was. I think that that's what everyone understood it to mean. I think that that's what I understood it to mean.
Is there something magical about addition that, rather than subtraction, if it achieves the same political end in your, like, what's the magical difference between these two things?
Because the reason we started this argument is that I said that if the right were to pack the court and add 4 justices, I would revert to the norm of 9 justices. And you made the argument, well, that's still court packing. And I don't see that it meaningfully is, because it's a reversion to the norm.
Okay, but
which is obviously not what you meant if when you said that you would find it justified to pack the court if the left did it first.
If we're going to have this
conversation, obviously not
then
what you
at
meant,
least
correct?
you can acknowledge that, on my view, you're just as in favor of court packing as I am, which is to say, almost never and only in the circumstance where the norm is broken.
No, I don't think
on my view of the term, there's no. I mean, you've defined it differently, but can you understand that on my view?
I think my definition is closer to the truth than yours.
The truth of what? Is there some objective
what people
definition of court
understand to
packing
mean when they talk about court packing?
I mean,
why are you dying on this hill? It's a weird hill to die on.
I'm dying on this hill because you were a total fucking asshole about this conversation.
I was mean to you, so you're willing to change the meaning of words to win an argument? I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings.
You literally misrepresented me, and then got very, very, like, indignant about the fact that I found this to be a meaningful distinction that I care about. You may not care about it, which is fine, but I wasn't the one who misrepresented your position, Wick. You were the one who misrepresented mine.
Because you feel I misrepresented your position, you are now trying to claim that me saying that I think that we should revert to the norm if the right were to pack the court and make it 13, 20, whatever, that we should revert it to the norm of 9, that is court packing in the way that you meant court packing when you answered the question, or you made the statement that if the left were to pack the court, it would be justified for the right to pack the court in retaliation.
Yeah,
I don't think that these things, I don't think that's what you meant.
If the left packed the court, the right would be justified in packing the court to regain the conservative majority it currently holds, or originalist majority would be a better way of putting it. You could do that with addition or subtraction. I don't care particularly about which way it would get done. Like, what difference does it make to me if it's addition or subtraction?
Because you obviously meant addition.
What's the magic, Wick? What's the magic in
the magic
in
is one is
reverting
to a norm, and the other is taking the broken norm and engaging in the world where the norm no longer exists and continue to play by that rules. That's the difference. I think it's a difference with a distinction. It's a distinctive difference. It's an important difference.
I think it matters.
It's a difference that matters.
It matters almost not at all. Like, for example,
you're acting very communist right now with the redefinition of words. By the way,
I mean, Wick, this is I mean, if we're going to play that game, Wick, the classic move of a fucking communist is to misrepresent someone and then get indignant about the fact that they have a problem with the fact that you are misrepresenting them.
The classic move is also to redefine words so that
but I don't think we need to just endlessly ad hom this. The point here, Wick, is that there are endless situations I could come up with, and I've given you a few, where a subtraction is just as likely to be viewed as a court pack as an addition. There's nothing fucking magic about it. If we
You're doing the
eliminated
thing where you
just
ignore the context again. And I know you're smarter than this.
no,
I know you're smarter than this,
it's
so it makes me wonder
context.
why you're doing this.
It's context that is specific to your proprietary definition.
Not a
It doesn't matter
proprietary
to mine.
definition. Here, we can pull it if you like.
It doesn't.
When people
I
talk
mean,
about court packing, because that's what words are. Words are what most people understand them to mean and how they are used. A thing is what it is used to do. When people talk about court packing, when people advocate for court packing, the examples we have of presidents threatening to pack the court are all, every single one, about addition.
okay,
right?
Wait, let's make this as obvious as possible. If I
Okay. Keep going.
if the right tomorrow eliminated every seat on the Supreme Court and then restored it to 9, meaning they get to appoint 9 justices, would that
That'd
be court packing?
reorganization of the court.
That's not court. It's not court. On your view, it's not court packing if the right eliminates
Because it would
every
be
seat and then
changing-
gets a 9-vote, 9-0 majority. That's not court packing.
I think that it would be the abolishment of the court, reorganization of the court. I wouldn't call it packing.
All right. Well,
I disagree with, for example, if you're going to call
if
that,
you want to fucking talk about dying on hills, we can leave it at that. I think there's nothing more I need to talk about on this topic.
do you think you won this exchange, man?
I think the position you just took is so patently ridiculous that
It's
anybody
patently
watching this is going to have a
ridiculous to
hard
say
time.
that words matter and the meanings of words matter. And like, for example, murder is different than killing, even though both result in a dead body. Correct? But it would be important to make the distinction between both murder and killing, even though both result in a similar thing. Is that correct?
Wick, the example that you just gave, and I don't want to move off of it because this is literally, I think, the last word I need to say on this topic. You said that if the right eliminated every seat
gonna
on
answer
the
my
court
question?
except for Justice Roberts and then refilled it to 9 with whoever they wanted, that would not be court packing in your view.
It would be
That is
a
position
reorganization of the
that
court
is
where I would not call it
so
packing.
crazy that I don't think it's worth it to continue arguing with definitions around with you because the position you've taken is obviously nonsensical.
No, of course not. But the reason that you're doing this is because you know you can't contend with it. And so you're trying to frame it as, I can just call it crazy, and that's all I need to do, and try to hand wave the need to actually support your positions here because you know you can't. And it's a rhetorical trick, very in line with something that Wilson does. But luckily, I'm better at debate than Wilson, and I'm better at debate than a lot
Okay.
of people on the right.
So
and we can
is there-
cut
is there-
through this
is there
bullshit.
anything else you
we
would-
can
is
cut
there
through this
anything else-
dishonest way of
Is
dealing
there
with
anything else you would
conversations.
like to talk
Again,
about?
we understand that words matter, that the
Mhm.
definitions of words matter, that the distinction matters, even if it might result in the same thing, much like murder and killing are distinctly different and have distinct meanings that it is important to keep the distinction of, but both result in a dead body.
So if your position, and I'm just going to keep reiterating it, is that if we eliminated every justice on the court except for the Chief Justice and then expanded it back to 9, appointing universally conservative originalists, that would not be court packing. I understand the point you're making, Wick. I think that's all I need to say on this point. I think it speaks for itself. Is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Oh, no, I think I'm good. I think I did what I needed to do tonight.
All right, Wick. Well, have a good night, buddy.
Bye-bye.